Welcome to today's episode, where we delve into a case that is both harrowing and heart-wrenching, one that will stay with you long after you hear it. This is the story of Emmaleigh Barringer, a bright and cheerful baby whose life was tragically cut short in one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Emmaleigh was not just a victim, she was a beloved daughter, sister, and tiny warrior who brought joy to everyone around her. But her story is one of unimaginable betrayal, brutality, and loss, a stark reminder of the evil that can hide behind even the most charming facade. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the sensitive and deeply disturbing nature of this case. It contains graphic details that may be difficult for some listeners. If you have a hard time with such stories, I encourage you to proceed with caution. This isn't just a crime story. It's a tragic tale that underscores the vulnerability of the innocent and the importance of justice. Stay with me as we explore the devastating events that led to Emmaleig's untimely passing and the fight to ensure that her voice was heard. Emmaleigh Barringer came into the world on Thanksgiving Day in 2015. A joyful yet early arrival, born 8 weeks premature. Despite her tiny size, she was a fighter from the very beginning, earning her nickname as the family's tiny warrior. She was a bright and cheerful baby with an infectious smile, rarely crying and bringing endless happiness to those around her. Emmaleigh was deeply cherished by her mother, Amanda Atkins, and her older siblings, Nathaniel, age 7, Carly, age 6, and Cameron, age 2. Together, they formed a close-knit, loving family that revolved around the joy and energy Emmaleigh brought into their lives. In the summer of 2016, Amanda, a devoted and protective mother, made a life-changing decision. Wanting to provide a safer, better environment for her children, she moved her family from Baltimore, Maryland, a city she felt was unsafe for raising kids, to the quiet, rural landscapes of West Virginia. This move was meant to be a fresh start, a chance to build a new life in a calmer, more peaceful community. It was shortly after this move that Amanda met Benjamin Taylor, known as Benji. Benji quickly became a significant figure in her life, winning her over with his charm and what seemed to be genuine affection. He integrated seamlessly into the family dynamic, appearing to embrace the role of a partner and a father figure to Amanda's children. Amanda believed she had found her dream prince, a man who seemed perfect in every way. However, what Amanda didn't know was that Benji had a troubling past. Beneath his outward charm lay a criminal history that included convictions for burglary and multiple parole violations. These dark secrets would eventually unravel, leading to a devastating tragedy that no one could have foreseen. After a whirlwind romance, Benjamin Taylor moved in with Amanda Atkins and her children just a few months into their relationship. On social media, Amanda shared her joy with friends and family, describing Benji as her dream prince. She believed she had finally found the stability and love she had been seeking for her family. Benji quickly became a fixture in their lives, participating in family activities and presenting himself as a supportive partner and father figure. Amanda had no reason to doubt him and felt her fresh start in West Virginia was falling perfectly into place. On the evening of October 2nd, 2016, life in the household seemed ordinary. Amanda and her 3 older children went to bed early, tired from the day's activities. Emmaleigh, the youngest, remained in her swing in the living room. Benji stayed up, claiming he needed to do laundry in the basement. The night was quiet, with nothing to suggest the horrors that would soon unfold. However, in the early hours of October 3rd, 2016, Amanda Atkins awoke to a disorienting and deeply unsettling realization. Her 10-month-old daughter Emmaleigh was not in her crib. The house was eerily quiet, save for the faint creaks of the floorboards as Amanda moved through the rooms in search of her baby. Initially, she thought perhaps Emmaleigh was with her partner, Benjamin Taylor, who was also not in bed. Amanda assumed they might both be downstairs. Maybe Emmaleigh had been fussy, and Benji had decided to soothe her in the living room. But as she checked each room of the house and found them empty, a gnawing sense of panic began to take hold. Determined to find them, Amanda descended into the dimly lit basement. Her heart raced as her eyes adjusted to the shadows. What she saw next froze her in place, a moment so horrifying and surreal that it felt like a nightmare. There, in the murky glow of the basement light, Amanda found Benji kneeling over Emmaleigh. His shirt was partially undone, his pants out of place, and her baby, her precious, vibrant little girl, lay motionless on the floor. Blood marked her tiny frame, and her once bright skin had turned cold and pale. Amanda's mind raced, unable to fully process what she was seeing. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Benji, disturbingly calm and detached, looked up at her and said he was just wiping her off. Amanda's heart sank. She rushed forward, picking up Emmaleigh and clutching her to her chest. As she held her daughter close, Amanda noticed Emmaleig's skin was ice cold, her tiny chest barely moving, her face was smeared with blood, and her small body was unresponsive. Faint, gurgling sounds escaped her throat, signs of severe distress that only deepened Amanda's panic. Amanda's emotions exploded in a torrent of anger, fear, and grief. She slapped Benji across the face with all her strength, screaming at him, "What did you do to her? What have you done?" Her voice echoed through the basement as the horrifying reality of the situation began to sink in. With her hands shaking uncontrollably, Amanda ran upstairs with Emmaleigh, leaving Benji behind in stunned silence. Upstairs, Amanda dialed 911, her fingers fumbling over the numbers. She sobbed into the phone as she tried to convey the urgency of the situation to the dispatcher. "My baby is bleeding. She's hurt so badly. He did something to her," she cried, her voice breaking as she repeated the words. In the background, she continued screaming at Benji, accusing him of harming her child. The dispatcher tried to calm her down and gather information, but Amanda's voice was raw with desperation and fury. Within minutes, emergency responders arrived at the home on Meadowlark Lane in Ripley, West Virginia. Amanda stood on the porch, still holding Emmaleigh tightly in her arms. Her face was streaked with tears, her voice hoarse from screaming. The paramedics quickly took Emmaleigh from her mother and assessed her condition. They immediately recognized the severity of her injuries and rushed her to a hospital in Charleston. Meanwhile, law enforcement detained Benji, who seemed detached from the chaos around him. Blood was found on his clothes and body, stains that matched the injuries Emmaleigh had sustained. Benji's attempts to explain away the evidence were unconvincing and only deepened investigators' suspicions. At the hospital, medical staff worked tirelessly to save Emmaleigh, but the extent of her injuries was catastrophic. She had suffered severe trauma, including a skull fracture and internal injuries that caused significant bleeding. The damage to her brain was irreversible, and despite the doctor's best efforts, there was nothing more they could do. Emmaleigh was declared brain dead shortly after her arrival at the hospital. Amanda remained by her daughter's side, clinging to hope that somehow Emmaleigh might recover. For 2 days, she sat with her baby, holding her hand and whispering words of love. But the reality was inescapable. Emmaleig's injuries were too great, and her tiny body could no longer fight. On October 5, 2016, Amanda made the heartbreaking decision to remove Emmaleigh from life support. Surrounded by the love of her family, Emmaleigh passed away in her mother's arms. In those final moments, Amanda held her daughter close, whispering words of comfort and promising her that she would never be forgotten. The vibrant, joyful light that Emmaleigh had brought into their lives was extinguished in an act of unimaginable cruelty, leaving a void that could never be filled. The house, once filled with laughter and the sounds of children playing, now stood silent, an echo of the life that had been so brutally taken away. This devastating loss marked the beginning of a long and painful journey for Amanda and her family. The tragedy of Emmaleig's death reverberated through their community and beyond, sparking grief, outrage, and a determination to seek justice for the little girl whose life had been so tragically cut short. As the investigation unfolded, the horrifying details of what had happened to Emmaleigh became painfully clear. Benjamin Taylor, the man Amanda had trusted with her family, quickly became the focus of law enforcement. The evidence against him was overwhelming and painted a chilling picture of betrayal and violence. Detectives meticulously combed through the scene and uncovered damning physical evidence. Bloodstains were found on Benji's clothing, specifically on his shirt, pants and thighs. More blood was discovered on the basement floor where the assault took place, as well as on Emmaleig's diaper. These stains matched the trauma Emmaleigh had suffered and formed a critical part of the case. Forensic testing further solidified the link between Benji and the crime. Male DNA was identified on Emmaleig's body and diaper. Disturbingly, the same DNA was also found on Benji's pants, erasing any doubts about his involvement. Adding to this, investigators seized Benji's phone and uncovered yet another layer of unsettling evidence. In the hours leading up to the attack, Benji had been searching for explicit content online. This activity, captured on his device, demonstrated a disturbing premeditation that could not be ignored. When questioned by investigators, Benji claimed he couldn't remember what had happened. He insisted that he had consumed a large amount of alcohol and smoked marijuana earlier in the evening, leading him to black out. He stated he had no recollection of carrying Emmaleigh to the basement or of the assault itself. However, police noted that Benji's behavior at the crime scene didn't align with someone experiencing the effects of intoxication or memory loss. His responses were coherent, calm, and disturbingly casual. While gathering statements, investigators learned that a neighbor had heard distressing noises on the night of the incident. Around midnight, the neighbor was startled by what they described as the screams of a child coming from Amanda's home. Though concerned, they ultimately decided not to intervene, assuming the sounds would subside. This haunting detail added a tragic layer to the case, as an opportunity to potentially stop the crime had passed unaddressed. The mounting evidence, physical, forensic, and behavioral, left no room for doubt. Benjamin Taylor's actions that night were deliberate, calculated, and devastating. But the investigation wasn't just about building a case against Benji, it was about uncovering every detail of what had happened to Emmaleigh so that justice could be pursued in her name. This case was far from over, but as the evidence stacked up, one thing became clear: the system had to deliver accountability for Emmaleigh and her family. The pursuit of justice for Emmaleigh Barringer brought both heartbreak and determination into the courtroom. As Benjamin Taylor stood trial, his defense and prosecution painted vastly different pictures of the man accused of committing one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. The defense strategy leaned heavily on character witnesses, calling on family members and friends who described Benji as a kind, caring individual incapable of such an atrocity. Witnesses included his parents, a former partner, and even neighbors, all of whom vouched for his supposedly gentle nature. They highlighted moments when he had supported loved ones and cared for children in the past, portraying him as a man who had simply made mistakes in life but was not capable of such a crime. The prosecution, however, presented a starkly different reality. Overwhelming forensic evidence took center stage, including bloodstains and DNA found on Benji's clothing and the victim, as well as the disturbing search history recovered from his phone. They also highlighted Benji's incriminating statements during police questioning, including his claims of memory loss and blackouts that contradicted his calm and collected demeanor at the crime scene. The evidence painted a picture not of an innocent man, but of one who had deliberately harmed a child and attempted to cover his tracks. In an effort to create doubt, the defense suggested that law enforcement had failed to properly investigate other possible suspects. They claimed the evidence against Benji was circumstantial and insufficient to convict him of the charges. However, this argument was quickly dismantled by the prosecution, who pointed to the consistency and strength of the forensic evidence, as well as Benji's failure to explain his own actions. Ultimately, the defense's efforts to cast doubt were not enough. The overwhelming weight of evidence made it clear that Benjamin Taylor alone was responsible for the tragic events of that night. The court rejected the notion of alternative suspects, focusing instead on the undeniable facts of the case. In the face of these competing narratives, the jury saw through the defense's claims. The proceedings were emotionally charged, with both sides arguing passionately for their version of events. But for Emmaleig's family, the trial was not just about evidence. It was about giving a voice to a child who could no longer speak for herself. The process laid bare the depth of Benji's betrayal and the cruelty of his actions, ensuring that justice would be served. The road to justice for Emmaleigh Barringer was a long and painful one, but it finally reached its conclusion in 2019. After years of grief, heartbreak, and tireless legal proceedings, Benjamin Taylor faced a jury for the horrific crimes he committed. The trial, which lasted 5 days, presented overwhelming evidence against Taylor, leaving little doubt in the minds of the jury. On the final day, the jury delivered a unanimous verdict, convicting him of 3 charges: first-degree murder, the death of a child resulting from abuse, sexual abuse by a guardian or custodian. These convictions underscored the enormity of his crimes and ensured he would face the harshest penalties allowed by law. When sentencing was announced, the weight of justice came down with full force. Taylor was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder, 40 years for the death of a child due to abuse, 10 to 20 years for sexual abuse by a guardian. The sentences were to be served consecutively, ensuring that Taylor would spend the rest of his life behind bars. For Emmaleig's family, it was a small measure of justice for the unimaginable pain they had endured. The tragedy of Emmaleig's death did not end with the courtroom. Her case sparked outrage and a call for change across West Virginia and beyond. In April 2017, just months after her death, Governor Jim Justice signed Emmaleig's Law, a landmark piece of legislation named in her honor. Emmaleig's Law significantly increased the penalties for child abuse resulting in death, ensuring that perpetrators of such heinous crimes would face harsher consequences. The law served as a powerful reminder of Emmaleig's legacy and a step toward protecting vulnerable children from similar fates. As the dust settled on the trial and Benjamin Taylor was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison, Emmaleigh Barringer's family and community were left grappling with the enormity of their loss. Justice had been served, but the heartbreak of losing Emmaleigh was something they would carry forever. For Emmaleig's relatives, the verdict brought a sense of closure, though it could never truly heal the wounds of her tragic death. They expressed relief knowing that Taylor would never again have the opportunity to harm another innocent soul. However, their grief remained raw and immeasurable. Emmaleig's mother, Amanda Atkins, spoke of the deep void left by her daughter's absence. Her laughter, her smile, and the bright joy she brought to their lives could never be replaced. The case not only devastated Emmaleig's family, but also deeply affected the entire community. Vigils were held to honor her memory, where neighbors, friends, and even strangers gathered to show their solidarity and support. Candles were lit, prayers were offered, and stories were shared about the love Emmaleigh had brought to those around her. Attendees wore T-shirts with her photo, a symbol of the enduring impact her short life had on so many. These gatherings underscored the strength of a community united in mourning and its determination to remember Emmaleigh as the joyful, innocent child she was. One of the most devastating aspects of this case was the betrayal of trust at its core. Benjamin Taylor had presented himself as a caring partner and father figure, someone Amanda could rely on to help her build a better future for her children. But the trial revealed the truth behind his facade, a man capable of unfathomable cruelty and deception. His heinous actions shattered not only Amanda's trust but also the faith of those who had believed in him. It was a painful reminder that evil can sometimes hide in plain sight. While nothing could bring Emmaleigh back, her story became a catalyst for change. Emmaleig's Law, named in her honor, stands as a testament to her memory and a step toward ensuring justice for victims of child abuse. The law's passage sent a powerful message. Crimes like this will not be tolerated, and the most vulnerable members of society deserve the utmost protection. Emmaleigh Barringer's life was tragically short, but her story has left an indelible mark. Her family and community continue to honor her memory, fighting to ensure that her voice is never forgotten. As we reflect on this case, it reminds us of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and justice. It also serves as a call to action, to do everything we can to protect children from harm and to hold those who betray that trust accountable. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If Emmaleig's story touched you, please consider sharing it to raise awareness and subscribing to this channel to support our efforts in bringing such important stories to light. Together we can honor Emmaleig's legacy and advocate for the safety and justice that all children deserve.